Hello, this is the Science of Reading presentation by Anthony Conley. During this presentation, I hope to show you just how layered and complex the science of reading actually is. It's something that should be taken seriously. All of the skills and theologies and methodologies, all those are equally important, and this is something that has to be mastered. Each one of those aspects has to be mastered. So, what is the science of reading? The science of reading is the systematic study of reading. Uh, the science of reading, it contains many concept theories and methodologies that are of all of equal importance. Every one of them has to be given time, equal time, to be learned, studied, and mastered in order to be considered a great reader. Uh, Throughout the rest of this presentation, I'm going to show you different parts of the science of reading. The simple view of reading. This theoretical model is often discussed in terms of a mathematical equation. That mathematical equation is D times LC equals RC. D stands for decoding, and that is defined as efficient word recognition. You're going to multiply that times language comprehension, which is understanding written language. And decoding times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. Now, reading comprehension, that is higher order thinking. It's a difficult concept to get across to students, especially students with a disability such as dyslexia, but that's just the way it is. Reading comprehension is, like I said, it's difficult, but it's something that has to be it has to be something that has to be taken seriously. With this mathematical formula, for some of you who are reading, all the variables must be satisfied. If one area is lacking, that's going to throw off all the other areas too, and you're still going to be considered an inefficient reader. So everything has to be satisfied in order to be considered a great reader. Scarborough's reading rope. Scarborough's reading rope was developed by Hollis Scarborough. When people talk about this particular theoretical model, they talk about it in terms of a natural rope that has two strands. On one strand, there's language comprehension. Under language comprehension, there's literacy knowledge and vocabulary and other aspects of language comprehension. On the other hand, on the other strand, uh, there's word recognition. Now, when it comes to language comprehension, excuse me, when it comes to reading comprehension, uh, when it comes to word recognition, I'm sorry, there's phonological awareness, decoding, and sight word knowledge. Now, the idea behind Scarborough's reading rope is this. What it's supposed to do is, once you have both strands of those mastered, they're going to intertwine, and it's going to make the rope that much tighter. And the idea behind that is, tighter the rope, which basically means the better the person is going to be considered a good reader. Now, you have to spend equal amounts of time on both strands of mastering both concepts, but I would say that you should spend a little bit more time on word recognition. That's going to get you closer and closer to automaticity. The four-part mental process was developed by Seidenberg and McClelland. There are four parts. There's the context processor, the phonological processor, the meaning processor, and the orthographic processor. Now, uh, the orthographic processor is, well, it makes sense of the shapes of letters and symbols and matches that to sound. The phonological processor understands the shapes of letters and the symbols, and it creates words. Now, a couple of quick points on the phonological processor. It allows us to understand our language and understand the sound of another language. Another point about the phonological processor is this. It gives reciprocity, which uh, allows us to lower and raise the pitch of our voice. Now, the next processor is the meaning processor, and it derives the meaning out of sounds and letters, and it connects them to words. And it does this by storing words, uh, creating new definitions, and storing the words storing the words in an organized way in our memory. Now, the last process is the content processor, and that is basically this. It understands the correct meaning of the words, and that's important because the English lexicon is filled with words with multiple meanings and words that sound like other words with a completely different meaning. ERI's phases of word level reading. Now, this particular theoretical model was created by Lenin C. ERI. There are four parts to this. You got the pre-alphabetic stage, the partial alphabetic stage, the full alphabetic stage, and the consolidated alphabetic stage. Now, during the pre-alphabetic stage, children have no knowledge of the alphabet. What they do is they pick up on cues from adults and they relate it to what they know. What that means is this: if a child sees a bottle or a Coke, a bottle or a can with the words Coca-Cola written on the front of it, they're going to relate that to soda or pop. The next stage is the partial alphabetic stage. And during this stage, children have some knowledge of letters, and when you combine that with context, they can store that, they can remember that by sight, excuse me. The next phase is the full alphabetic stage. Now, during this phase, children can store sight words in memory, they can make graphic and phoneme connections, and they can decode unfamiliar words. Now, the last stage is the consolidated alphabetic stage. During this stage, children are able to merge grapheme and phonemes together and make it easier on their memory. Phono- Phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is the awareness of sound. Phonological awareness is one of the most important aspects of reading because it's going to determine a child's reading ability. If a child is lacking phonological awareness, then they're going to be in a tough road when it comes to learning how to read. That's just the truth. This is something that has to be mastered in order to be considered a good reader. Now, phonological awareness is basically an umbrella term. That means that there are other aspects of reading that go under phonological awareness. And those aspects are you got alliteration, you got rhyming, you got unsec rhyming, segmentation. And one last note about phonological awareness is this: it's basically the foundation upon which all the other aspects of reading are built upon. Now, you got phonics. Phonics is the relationship between letters of written language and the sounds of spoken language. Phonics is something else that has to be mastered in order to be considered a good reader. Because if phonics is not mastered, that child is going to struggle when it comes to reading. A child has to be able to have a good grasp on letters and sounds of a language in order to be considered a great reader. Fluency. Now, when it comes to fluency, it means that a person is able to read a text quickly, accurately, and with expression. Now, fluency, that's basically a byproduct of mastering everything else that goes a part of reading. You cannot be a fluent reader if you don't have everything else mastered. You just can't do it. A few more points on fluency. Fluent readers, they read with expression instead of reading in a monotonous voice or a monotone voice. Another thing is they know when to pause when they're reading a text. One last point about fluency is this: a fluent reader has to be able to read with automaticity, but automaticity is not necessarily sufficient. It's not necessarily sufficient in determining a fluent reader. Vocabulary. Vocabulary is important because children have to know how to communicate with the world around them. They have to know that there's more than one word or more than one way to say something in order to get their point across. They have to know that having a large vocabulary or a relatively large vocabulary allows them to speak to the world, speak to people in a variety of ways. Code emphasis versus meaning emphasis. Code emphasis is learning a specific set of letters or a specific set of letters and words. When it comes to code emphasis, phonemic awareness is a skill that is very much necessary for code emphasis. Now, on to meaning emphasis. Meaning emphasis is geared towards whole word reading. Now, uh, detractors of code emphasis says this. They say that because of the lack of words and the lack of context in the reading text, that's going to cause children to be disinterested in reading. Now, meaning emphasis, on the other hand, that's filled with context. So last 2 points on meaning emphasis is this. They are supporters of meaning emphasis. They say that children are able to construct their own knowledge, and they're able to read, and they're able to use functional, authentic reading material. The last one is orthographic mapping. When it comes to orthographic mapping, it's about making letter sound connections so as to combine and recall the spelling, pronunciation, and meaning of words. Orthographic mapping takes place over a period of time. When it comes to orthographic mapping, uh, children are learning the letter patterns amongst different words. Now, there are a few skills that can help children learn orthographically, and they are spelling rules, words, prefixes, and suffixes, and there's more. Uh, One last thing about orthographic mapping is this. Once a child has a good grasp on orthographic mapping, they can commit words to memory, and they don't have to concern themselves with decoding. In conclusion, the science of reading is complex, as I've said before. It's complex, it's layered, it's going to take time and effort, but it's something that has to be done because, as I've just shown you, there are many parts, many topics, many aspects, many concepts of science of reading. It is something that you have to be taken seriously. You have to put in the work, and if you can master the science of reading, you're a really special person because, like I said, reading in and of itself is a complex skill. And when you think about the fact that human beings are not necessarily wired to read, that should just show you how complex the science of reading actually is. Here are my references. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and have a good day.